Christie Turley. Really enjoyed talking to Christie. Intuition. What does it mean to you? Is it something that's instinctual? Is it something that you hear a voice? Christy has gone through very, very tough times where she had many obstacles to go through. She describes it as experiencing many, many deaths of her ego and spirituality and feelings, and things have happened to her in different areas of her life, religion, business, etc., where she had to make drastic changes and turns. And she found enlightenment and she found inner peace with intuition. She's got a great podcast where she talks about it, where she opens up and she talks about the turmoil that she went through and how she was able to turn it around, how long it took. She wrote a book on it as well. The intuition led business, just fascinating discussion. I really, really enjoyed talking to her. She uses terms that I've never heard before: spiritual narcissism, shadow work, the dark night of the soul. She has this 10 stage of intuition that we go through. I'll tell you the first couple: potentiality and feeling. But where are you in your intuition development? But a wonderful conversation with Christy. Please take a look at her podcast and her book, but just a great discussion on intuition. And by the way, how does discipline play a role in intuition? She uses a term that she kind of gels the two together: discernment. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. My goodness, Christy Turley, thank you so much for your time today. Very excited to talk to you. So, what is the difference between intuition and impulse or instinct?
Great question. And it's great to be here. So, yeah, a lot of people get the two confused. There's a huge difference between instinct and intuition. So, instinct is primarily driven by your ego. Now, don't get your feathers ruffled when I say ego. Be a little touchy subject. Everyone has an ego. It's a healthy
Mm-hmm.
thing to have an ego. It's actually what helps us get up in the morning and get us motivated and have confidence to deal with life. Okay. But a lot of people mistake their instinct or their impulse. It's almost like using that animalistic part of your brain as opposed to the higher executive function. There's different parts of the brain. So when your conditioning, when your programming kicks into place, all of us have come from different backgrounds, different ways that we were raised, and all of that contributes to subconscious bias, subconscious beliefs. Subconscious, if you break apart the word, sub means beneath, conscious means awareness. So it's really outside of your awareness. So you could be thinking that something's a great idea, but if you're using your instinct or your ego to make that decision, you could be coming from your very limited viewpoint. as
Hmm.
opposed to your intuition. Now, there's three levels of the mind: the subconscious, which I talked about, the conscious mind, and there's the superconscious. This is what I like to call your higher genius. My podcast is named that. And this is where, some of the best authors and musicians and artists of all time have received their inspiration. You'll hear a lot of them talk about how they don't know where it came from. Like the idea was like from their muse, the Greeks call it a muse. And that's what I would say is the main difference. And really, the difference, like the line in the sand to know if you're using your instinct or your intuition, is really through this power of discernment.
Hmm.
Instinct is with ego, intuition is without ego. When you can set your biases
Hmm.
and your projections aside and really tune into the heart of the matter and dig a little deeper, that's your intuition. That's and that takes practice. It's a muscle that we have to work out, just like working out at the gym. We all have an intuitive muscle. We all have that sixth sense. It's just how practiced at it, how strong are we at it?
It's interesting because when I first equate instinct, I think animals have instinct. They're built in to be
Sure.
instinctive, to
Yes.
hunt, to fish, and ego doesn't play a role in that, does it?
No, I mean, animals don't really have an ego, but if you think about
Hmm.
it, okay, what if you were in a heated argument,
Mm,
right? Your ego might come
certainly.
to be the elephant in the room, right? Because you want to be right. That's the enemy of intuition. When you
Hmm.
know you're right, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's one of the top unconscious biases people have. And experts in a field of study, which is probably a lot of the people who are talking are here listening to us today, they have an area of expertise. We can fall prey to that Dunning-Kruger effect, that I'm right. I know I'm right because the evidence says so, or because I say so, right?
Hmm.
And that's where we have to be careful. That's where we have to use that power of discernment to see if this is really truth or it's
Wow.
just what I think.
Can you imagine, Christy, if some of our politicians and some of the debates we hear these days, they're more about being right than they are being open-minded and listening.
Yes.
It's so tragic.
Yes, I mean, that's what I call intuitive intelligence. One of the hallmarks of intuitive intelligence is being able to look at things from a holistic perspective, meaning multiple perspectives, not just one perspective or one party line. You brought up politics, I didn't.
Hmm.
The I'm right, you're wrong of religion, the us versus them thinking that is so pervasive
It
in our
is.
culture. I mean, that's what turns off intuition. That's what turns off critical
Hmm.
thinking. That's what turns off coming up with innovative ideas that could change the world.
Certainly. On your YouTube, Christy, you have the first in the last series of 5. You took
Mhm.
it some time off. You've gone through some tribulation. That sounds trite, isn't it? Doesn't it? But you went through some major changes in your life, Christy, where you found didn't find fulfillment. You were working with clients who were upset or just not fulfilled as you found that you were. You've hired and fired, and some of your marketing internal wasn't working the way it should be. And you came to this epiphany through all these struggles, and you found intuition. You use great terms that I've never heard before, like shadow work and dark night of the soul. And you talk about. There's a question coming around here soon, Christy. By the way, but you talk about how you were raised in this religion that was narcissistic and that was sexist. It was male dominated, and how you had to unlearn a lot of those things, and you came to this realization through intuition. So please walk us through that process, where you were and how you got there, so those that perhaps are in similar situations can help and relate.
Yeah. Okay. Great question. And it has a long
Good,
answer. So buckle up
good, good.
and stop me at any time if you want more clarity. So,
Please.
yeah, I would call myself a super achiever, or a more
Mm,
negative term would be an overachiever. I had
mm,
been since a young age. Got my first newspaper route at age 10,
wow.
because I wanted to earn enough money for a Nintendo system that my parents wouldn't buy me.
Mm,
And the kid next to me was counting his dollars. And I was like, where did you get all that money? And he told me, and I said, can you get me one of those? So that's when the overachievement, well, it wasn't where it was born. I was telling neighborhood kids to take naps at age 3. So
mm,
I've had this lifetime of it. And straight out of college, I worked for this startup that grew very, very fast. We earned a ranking in the top 100 of the Inc. 500. Grew by 3,000% in 5 years,
wow.
juggling a full load of school, double majoring, this internship, which turned into a head of marketing.
Wow.
Fast forward, got another job as another head of marketing, this time instead of a $15 million company, which they've grown a lot even now since then, for a $200 million company. So now I'm like in a very much larger role. We did a partnership with a $7 billion company. At age 24, I'm put in charge of this project, no pressure, right? We had all these goals that we had to make, or the project would be off. It was a pilot project. No one had ever done anything like this in the industry before. Again, no
Wow.
pressure. And we surpassed all the goals in 9 months. And I realized, wow, I've made my last two bosses millions of dollars, and
Mm,
I did not ask for a percentage. Not smart, right? I
mm,
didn't know. Hindsight is 2020. Then started my agency and my marketing and communications firm. We worked with anybody from startups, solopreneurs, to 7, 8, 9 figure businesses, even some Fortune 500 companies, and had a full staff. And, all of this success and achievement, I didn't even mention my high school days. I had lots of achievements there, top
mm,
2%, full ride scholarship, 3 sports teams, varsity teams. Like, this was a lifetime of associating my identity with achievement.
hmm,
This is where a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders get it wrong, is when you identify yourself with achievement. What happens when things don't work out right?
mm,
When you don't win? When you have a failure? If your identity is wrapped up in that, you can feel shattered. You can feel like a huge failure, even though the failure is outside of yourself. It's not you, it's
mm,
the thing, it's the situation. But this entanglement can cause a huge problem. I realized this.
mm,
And this is why I'm so passionate about helping people get in touch with their true identity, their genius zones, and tapping into their intuition. Because without that connection to self, without that self discovery that we all must, go on that journey, we must go on that inner journey. Without that, we can become lost, especially if our identity is wrapped up in achievements, as I've mentioned, other people, like children, for example. You've seen those license plates. Oh, I'm Kinsey's mom. It's like,
mm.
that's her identity,
Yeah.
or the stickers on the back of the van of the stick people. It's like, be careful what you hang your identity on.
Hmm.
Another example of this is being involved in certain groups or organizations, whether it's religion, whether it's politics. We've mentioned those. But what about the masterminds that you belong to?
Hmm.
What about the company that you may be working for at this time or be in charge of? Where are you putting your identity? If it's anything but your true self underneath all the masks of programming and conditioning and expectations of what other people have wanted us to be or how other people have wanted us to show up. If we're doing that, we're giving our power away. And when we give our power away, we lose connection with ourselves, and it makes it harder to tap into our intuition to find out what is it that we really want? What is it that would really make us happy? What direction do we go in? What opportunity do we take so that we get closer to that lasting fulfillment and happiness? And I feel like that's really the key to everything, really. But how
Hmm.
we grow up, how we're raised, is to ignore and downplay intuition because it's not, oh, you can't prove it. You can't, but uh, I have some counterpoints to that.
Hmm.
There are ways to prove it. That's a long answer, but what you're alluding to, this 5-part series that I put out on my podcast, the Higher Genius podcast, as well as YouTube. That in the first episode, I went through my reinvention story, and a little longer version of what I just gave you, but a lot more depth of emotions and things that I
Yeah.
went through.
Yeah.
And then in the next 4 episodes after that, I go through this 4-phase journey of, if you find yourself going through a dark night of the soul or feeling discontent with your success and then feeling guilty, like, I've been successful. Why am I not happy? You
Hmm.
know, if you're feeling that way, I highly recommend that series because I go through, okay, what emotions could you be feeling in each of these phases? Because it's a journey, right? And not every phase is the same. It all looks, each phase of the journey looks different, just like in a movie or a book. We have a hero's journey, right? There's the call to the adventure. There's the denial of the call to adventure. Like, no, not me. Couldn't be me.
Hmm.
And then the facing the dragon or the big problem, the big upheaval. And then the superpowers that you gain on that journey, and then going back to the Shire or wherever it is that you came from in the movie or the book that you're reading, right? And sharing it with everybody else. And that's this journey I take you on. And I go through, like, okay, if you're feeling this way, here's some do's, here's some don'ts. Like, take it from
Hmm.
me. I made some mistakes along the way. I also have helped a lot of clients and seen these patterns. Like, I am a huge spotter of trends and patterns. That's what made me so good in marketing. And I feel like that's what makes me so good with helping people getting more in touch with their themselves, like their hidden genius zones and their intuition. So yeah, it was not an easy journey. And I don't feel like it has to be as maybe dramatic as how it happened to me, but we all go through these phases in life, whether it's a divorce or a death or a financial loss. When we lose touch with what reality we thought we were living, and when we start to kind of feel like the ground underneath our feet is unsteady and unstable, well, that plays out in all areas of your life, whether it's relationships or your business. And this is kind of like my gift to the world. Like, here's a guide. Here's something to help, take it or leave it. This is what I found along the way. I documented everything. Like,
Yeah.
hope this helps. But yeah, I mean, intuition was like the superpower I brought back from the Shire. It was, I feel like it's the key to really understanding yourself, understanding others, and understanding the world.
Hmm. You big Lord of the Rings fan?
I am. I mean, I
Okay.
love all sorts of stories.
Sure.
Yeah, I was an avid reader as a child, and I love a good story, love a good
Yeah.
movie, all its forms. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the there's these terms that you use when you're describing, the religion, and you called it spiritual narcissism, and I've never heard that term before, but it's so apropos. I don't people and the relationship to their spirit and their God is their own, but we need to find the best path in our religion and what it means, and it just wasn't yours in your path. And it was so apropos. And when you came to that realization, you talk about, oh, Chris, you do such a great job of explaining everything, and I want people to listen or to watch your podcast for that. But you do such a great job of realizing that
Thank
and
you.
discovering it and explaining it. And it's heart-wrenching, but at the same time it's enlightening because you made the best of it.
Yeah.
You made the absolute best of it.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean,
sh-
and
yeah.
spiritual, or go ahead. If
No, 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 don't.
spiritual narcissism, like just
Yeah.
so people know what I'm talking about there. So I feel like the word narcissism has been in the spotlight or at least reached some kind of
Mm,
mass because I
mm,
see more and more people talking about narcissism and also talking about gaslighting.
mm,
When someone tries to tell you that that's not really what it is that you're feeling or thinking, it's something else. Like they try to gaslight you, and it comes from a movie actually where
mm,
this abusive spouse tries to basically trick his spouse into thinking that it's in her head or she's the one that's crazy, and he's orchestrating this whole scenario. Spiritual narcissism on the other hand, I feel like that's when someone gets in the way between you and your higher wisdom,
mm,
between you and God or source or whatever you identify with, right? And that's when someone sets themselves up as a guru, and you can give your power away willingly to these people, by the way.
mm,
It's when someone sets themselves up and says, I am receiving answers for you. Okay, this could be found with psychics, mediums, tarot readers. Now, there's a light and shadow side of everything, right? Sometimes listening to psychics or mediums or tarot readers, you can get good insights.
mm,
As long as you're looking at it through the lens of what am I discerning, like what is feeling right to me, or am I just taking their word for it? When you turn off your intuition and just rely on someone else's intuition, that's where you can fall into trouble with spiritual narcissists.
mm,
Not everyone is a spiritual narcissist, but it's the people who willingly take the power. They're like,
mm,
oh, you're giving me your power. I am going to take it and run with it and tell you like what I see or what I hear or whatever. And it's like the fine line is you've got to allow people the opportunity to see or hear or feel for themselves and
mm,
determine what their truth is, because truth is multidimensional. It's not linear, it's not binary. So
mm,
yeah, with a religion, it's a very controversial topic because in religion or in politics or wherever we're talking, there's a very strong binary version of truth. And
mm,
you go to any religion, one religion's going to have a slightly different variation than another religion. Some religions are more high demand or strict. Other religions are more like non denominational, like come as you are. Some religions actually, we can get into this if you want, but they have a little more control or say so about your behavior or the information or your thoughts or your emotions, what they should and shouldn't be. And I've actually done a lot of research into Stephen, I hope I say his last name right, Stephen Hassan,
oh yeah,
his work with the BITE model.
yeah,
BITE standing for behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotion control. What I think is so brilliant about his work is that it's teaching people how to recognize
mm,
this. And he does it in under the guise of cults, okay? And I'm not saying religions are cults, okay? Do not misunderstand me, okay? But I can see how anytime you give your power away to a group or another person, a cult is kind of like a narcissist. Narcissist is like the singular version, a cult is more like the plural version.
interesting.
Anytime you give your power away, you can get lost and
Mm,
you can do things. There's a quote, I cannot remember who said it, but to get a good person to do bad things, what do you think you need? Religion. And religion
uh,
could be any belief system, right? So when we have such a strong viewpoint of a belief system, that's what takes us away from seeing things holistically or seeing
Hmm.
things from multiple perspectives, which leads to greater intuitive insights, which leads to innovation, which leads to so many breakthroughs that you can have in your life or your business. And it's by tapping into that strength, that sense. It's like physical senses. We all have a sixth sense. We all have it. It just may show up differently for each of us. Like each of us has a very different intuitive superpower that's more dominant. So yeah, that was quite the riff. So feel free to
Yeah.
ask me another question if
No,
you
I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the perspective too that you. It seems to me that you separated from this religion that you were kind of raised with, but you then again mentioned that you had, in fact, writing your book, you thought about it and you prayed about it. So
Mhm.
you mentioned that, so you still
Yeah,
have a relationship with God, just perhaps not in the particular way that religion mandated.
correct. And I feel like each person has to figure out what their own conscience, what their own heart,
Mm,
how how you want to express that spirituality. We all have a spiritual side. I mean, anything that's non-tangible, non-physical is really spiritual if you think about it.
hmm,
You could like that could encompass mental realm, emotional realm, and you've got the spiritual realm. So this is proven even in studies about ESP, extrasensory perception. There are three-letter agencies in the U.S. government who have studied ESP for decades. And
hmm.
that information is now declassified if you're very interested in doing that. But they
Wow.
used it for espionage on other countries through the power of the
Hmm.
mind and through the power of ESP. And they took regular people off the street and trained them how to do this. So, this is a skill that can be learned, and it's a skill that can give you tremendous personal power to know what is it that's right for me and in my life, my direction, my career trajectory, my relationships, etc. And you just have to know, don't doubt yourself. Don't like just defer to other people because you think they're experts. Like, what feels true to you? And I've had like a very, like, I would say, difficult rebuilding time. Like, I deconstructed religion
Hmm.
and then I rebuilt, like, what do I value? Like, what is it that resonates with me? And for a while, I didn't even pray because I'm like, it was like I thought, there's this term I saw and I thought it was so funny. It was like an agnostic polytheist. Like an agnostic meaning
Hmm.
you don't know if God is there or not, like it can't really be proven or not. But if it can be proven, then it's probably more than one, right? Probably more like
Hmm.
the polytheistic thing, because you've got spirit guides, you've got angels, you can have different viewpoints on that, right? It's all valid. The thing is, we can't really prove it like definitively while we're here.
Hmm.
That's the test of this earth life, is not really being able to fully see beyond the veil, although we can kind of see glimpses of it. And so I feel like if one man or one woman declares, I have the answer for everyone on earth, like that's just too much power.
Yeah.
That's like godlike power, and that is so dangerous for people's psyches and for their personal journeys because they're basically giving away their power to someone else to decide for them. So yeah, I mean, I it's hard to explain my spiritual leanings now. Like I'm an explorer. I'm
Hmm.
like the Bob Marley song Soul Rebel. I just love to explore and like what feels true to me. And as soon as I could let go of, okay, no one organization or no one person has the ultimate truth, which I never fully subscribed to be honest.
Hmm.
But once I let go of that, like I wasn't supposed to think that because other people said I was supposed to think that, it opened up so much for me. So that's what I mean. Like this us versus them, look anywhere in the world,
Hmm.
anywhere in the news. They're trying to do this to us.
Yeah.
Thinking in terms of us versus them, or good or bad. But what if it's a spectrum? What if it's not black and white? What if it's shades of gray? And by exploring the different shades of gray, you can come to a better consensus of what might be true.
I share your philosophy and just constantly learning. Can you,
Yeah,
I will change my mind on almost anything given new evidence.
exactly.
Can you
That's called
imagine?
openness. That's
It's just
called openness.
openness. That's the exact definition. Can you imagine? Again, I refer to our leaders and our politicians. If they shared that, we would certainly be in a different place. The term that you used while going through this deconstruction that really stuck to me, Christy. You said that you were experiencing many, many deaths in your
Yes.
ego, in your
Yeah.
spirituality, in your feelings. It's amazing that that reconstruction was needed. And thank you so much for sharing it.
Yeah, these mini deaths, I mean, we all experience them. There's, the one big death right at the end of our lives. And we can have a lot of smaller deaths as well, like the loss of a friendship or a loss of a loved one or a loss of a business or loss of an income. Any kind of loss where we're experiencing grief can be considered one of these mini deaths, and it can cause an upheaval that can bleed into other areas of your life. And it's important to really develop self love, self compassion. And I find one of the best ways to do that is tapping into your intuition
Hmm.
and just learning to love and accept yourself more and more. And I feel like in the business world, especially, it's very action oriented, very results driven, and it's go, go, go. And what I found with working with thousands of entrepreneurs, I mean, not just like, teaching a class, I mean, one on one, like deep work, a lot of them can get lost in that and forget to turn inwards, to
Mm.
forget to slow down. And I have this saying, if you want to speed up business growth, slow down and tune in.
Mm.
So sometimes it's kind of like it might feel a little bit like a slingshot, where you're pulling back to then like catapult away. Like it's kind of like that. When you're going through these mini deaths, you can feel the need to pull inward and maybe even become a hermit or retreat. Honor that. Don't like try to push yourself or force yourself to do something that doesn't feel aligned or doesn't feel quite right. It's important to honor that and really listen. And in those moments of listening, you can have some very profound insights that change everything.
Mm. Mm. I know what you mean by deep losses. I feel that way every time the Yankees lose. That's just a joke, of course. Another thing you mentioned is that I've never heard of is shadow work while doing
Yes.
this kind of discovery, and you said that can have a negative connotation as well.
Yes.
Define shadow work. These terms are
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
So, shadow work was a term first coined by Debbie Ford in her books. And a lot of people, I feel like it's a misnomer. A lot of people think that shadow work is looking at the dark parts of yourself that you wish
Hmm.
no one would want to see. I feel like, and I feel like a lot of people might agree with this, there are parts of ourselves that we don't want other people to see, that we feel shame
Hmm.
about or guilt about, especially perfectionists. They really try to put the shine on and make sure that people don't see what's going on, really, and that's what it means, but I would also argue that shadow work can also mean the parts of you that you've rejected or that other people have rejected in you that
Hmm.
actually could be some of your most brilliant parts of yourself. In a way, through our conditioning, through programming, through growing up, through all these experiences that we've been through, maybe experiencing criticism or judgment or loss, we've hidden parts of ourselves. We've
Hmm.
tried to fit in, we've tried to blend in. And in a way, this is primal. this is like a, you had to fit into the tribe for survival, way back when in the ancient times.
Mm.
And this happens all the time nowadays. You have someone who wants to have a message and share a message online, whether it's through a podcast or YouTube or a blog or the stage, wherever they're sharing this message. And if they're not really truly tapped into their genius zone and truly tapped into their superpowers, their message, although great, could be so much better. But
Mm.
although it's great, can also blend in and sound like someone else's, especially if you have a huge admiration for someone, or you're trying to have a Tony Robbins business, or whoever it is, that you look up to. And the moment you start idolizing someone else, you're also giving your power away. You're deferring to their expertise. A much better way is to become more knowledgeable about yourself and those parts of you that you've discarded or you've dismissed or that you've buried deep down,
Hmm.
so as not to bring up feelings of shame from the past. And that it's really healing work. Shadow work is healing work. So
Hmm.
it's shining a light on those shadows and embracing them, accepting them. Sure, there's some parts of the shadow that are not really socially acceptable, right?
Yeah.
Right? Um, but it's part of accepting and embracing all of you. Otherwise, you're walking around as half a person. The
Hmm.
part that you've accepted, and the other part you've not accepted is the part that you're not able to be your whole self, your true self. You're wearing masks to hide it instead. So shadow work is so important to do to become a fully integrated human being. And I feel like too, to have true compassion and empathy for other people and what they're going through. Because
Hmm.
if you've rejected something in yourself and you try to help someone that may be going through something, you could end up projecting onto them. You've heard the term projection in
Certainly.
psychology, right? And it can truly not be helpful when you project. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like it's about being able to hold the entire spectrum of the human drama, the human being, and not just only being able to tolerate certain parts of the human experience or the human being.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Christy. When you talk, a lot of what you say is very kind of science. The science versus art kind of discussion came in my mind when I
Mhm.
was researching you, and then I hear what you're saying, what you went through, and how you reconstruct, and intuition is there. But you're also a strong believer in astrology.
Yes, I love astrology. There's a saying that millionaires don't pay attention to astrology. Billionaires do.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of psychology in it. Carl Jung, a very famous psychologist, many would say he's the father of modern psychology, believed in astrology.
Hmm.
He did a lot of work into archetypes and dreams and the subconscious mind as well. Astrology really is like a clock. We think of time as linear, like it's a forward marching arrow, but in fact, it's cyclical. And you can look at this over generations of time. Like, for example, and I'm not an astrologist per se, that's not what I do for business or anything. I find it fascinating because I can get a lot of insights about my personality, about other people's personality, how those personalities blend, and even like cycles of time, as I'm going to allude to. Looking at England, for example, you could go and look and see when they were founded, when England was founded, and then look over centuries of time and be able to chart it and see, like, for example, a Pluto return, which happens every 250 260 years, and be able to see the effects of that and how time kind of repeats itself.
Wow.
And with a person, there's this magical time that people have chalked it up to be a midlife crisis. There's a couple of these actually. And the one that I had just gone through was, well, there was a couple of them. There's a Pluto square Pluto, which means where you were born, where Pluto was when you were born versus where it is now.
Hmm.
And this happens around age 38, 39, 40, 41. And it can cause a huge upheaval. And I think of it like, if you do believe in God, it's like, how cool that we can actually have some kind of map of our life to know and to see, oh, this might be happening for a reason. This might be happening for my growth. This there might be a lesson in here. Maybe I need to pay attention. Maybe this is an important time. There's another period in late 50s where this can happen. And again, this is not, my realm of expertise, but I've gone deep enough to really understand it and
Hmm.
appreciate it. And again, billionaires appreciate this. They
Yeah.
they time certain events. Um, love them or hate them, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan had an astrologist that told them good times to have certain press events and things like this, because
Wow.
just like the moon, okay, did you know? Most people may not know this, but this plays into astrology as well. The moon has effects on our oceans, correct?
Of course.
The moon
Gravity.
has effects on wildlife. Hunters check the moon, fishermen check the moon. Okay. In police departments, they're like, oh, it must be a full moon because there's the crazies are out there, right? The moon is so powerful, right? It's the same with the other planets. It's
Hmm.
just it's almost like the powers that be don't want us to know this. So they
Interesting.
make fun of it. But there's actually tremendous insight that you can get from it. I just would guard against putting all of your eggs in one basket. It's
Hmm.
just a little bit of information here and there to guide you. But yeah, you can take it overboard just like anything. But yeah, I find it fascinating, especially when you really learn to read your star chart, to read your natal chart. I mean, that's how people would create arranged marriages back in the day. They would look at people's
Wow.
star charts. Where has this gone? Where has this information been, gone
Hmm.
to? It's been ostracized. It's been called witchcraft, right? By religion. So again, be
Hmm.
careful of the us versus them. Be careful of the
Right.
binary good, bad, yes, no thinking, because you could miss out on a lot, actually.
Yeah, you certainly can. You're in one of the podcasts, you mentioned one of your blogs that I found fascinating, where you describe the 10 stages
Mhm.
of psychic intuition development. And it's 1 through 10. And I would just go over it quickly, and I want people to go read it and check it out. But it's,
Mhm.
potentiality, filling, inspired, right? Initiated, awakened, strengthened, empowering, discerning, enthusiastic, confident. And I find myself, when I try to gauge myself, I find myself, well, I'm here at 3 or 4, and then I go down as well. Actually, I in some things I could be here. And so, how does one use that your chart there?
So it would be interesting to hear if you want to share. You
Sure.
said some areas you feel like you're 3 or 4 on this
Yeah.
chart, but other areas may be stronger. Can you
Yeah.
tell me what the difference is between those areas?
Well, yeah, okay. So number 3, I'm inspired. The person believes that any positive idea or solution is from their intuition. They are busy doing good, but not their higher good. There's some points where I feel that way, but there's other points where I feel really empowered. The person could tap into their intuition, bring forth, align ideas to solutions to everyday problems. So everyday problems, I don't know how minute, paying bills, or I run a business. So, would it be a problem there of solving a client problem or signing something like that? So I feel empowered there. And then number 10, confident. The person is exceptionally confident in their, highly developable spiritual senses. They rarely question themselves and operate with low ego to maintain neutrality and accurate. I mean, I'm a very confident person, Christy, but I'm not arrogant. So I have a lot of confidence in a lot of my decisions, I generally don't go back on them. If I made a mistake, we have to, learn and hopefully not do it again. So I just rambled, but I could be 3, 7, or 10.
Yeah.
Did that
Yeah,
help?
I could see what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
I would say like the definitive probably line between like a 1 and a 10 on the scale would be, and 1 is where you're really relying on your gut instinct, right? And you
Mm.
think that like, and it's kind of, it's a spectrum, right? 3 is you start to feel like anything could be inspiration, right? It's like a book just fell off the shelf. That must mean something, right?
Mm.
And I would say the way that you move up that scale is through discernment, is
Mm.
really being able to keep your ego in check. Your ego is very strong with the number 1 and it's lower in number 10. Again, ego's not
Ah.
bad, but when you're really trying to tap into a situation and really trying to like figure out, problem solve, think of an idea, things like this, the ego has to be really low. Here's an example. A lot of inventors would not sleep very much during the night, like 2-3 hours
Hmm.
sometimes, and they would strategically create naps throughout the day. One of them, I can't remember who now, would actually hold something in his hand as he fell asleep, and then when he fell asleep and it knocked over and it would wake him up. Well, why would this be?
Edison.
Edison, thank you. Why would this be? I'll tell you. Because in that liminal state between when you're in that alpha, like delta, theta state of your brain
Hmm.
waves when you're sleeping versus beta when you're fully awake, there's this magic liminal state in between where you're not completely awake, but you're lucid enough where your ego's out of the way. Your
Hmm.
ego's more in line in the beta brainwave state. Okay, this is like the fully awake. Ego is more present there. In the alpha state, which is actually induced during meditation, you can have a lucid, you can have thoughts going through your head, you can think about things, but your ego's to the side, right? Alpha can also be induced through yoga and also through drinking something like matcha, which
Hmm.
has a lot of L-theanine in it. It calms the body. Any anxious feelings kind of go by the wayside, right? And you can really start to discern better, not from an ego perspective, not from an instinctual perspective, but from a low level of ego and a high level of neutrality. And this is where some of your best ideas will come when
Hmm.
you're in that state, in that alpha state, or when you're in that state of being able to put any fears, any anxieties, worries, anything that the ego is going to try to pop into your mind to keep it safe, to keep you safe. And that's what it's wired for. We needed it in tribal days for
Hmm.
survival, like to tell us where there's threats. When you're doing intuitive work or you're doing innovative problem solving work, that scanning for threats thing, it works to an extent, but it can block you. It can really distract
Hmm.
you from seeing what the root of the problem is. It might keep you distracted at the superficial surface level. um, so does that clarify things for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's very, very. That's very, very insightful, and that's how you arrive there. Yeah. So on the podcast, Christy, I bring up like yourself. I went through some kind of reawakening and some mini deaths. So I started my business in the 90s. And soon after, I was not paying attention to my body and I was not working out. I found myself at, 340 pounds. The doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. Right. So I
Wow.
made drastic changes in my life and I lost, 130 pounds over the next year and a half. When I tell people this, I just see it in their eyes. How did you do it? Like there's some secret. And I always just say discipline.
Yep.
I just say discipline. I got focus, I got discipline, I did it. While intuition plays a large role in your life, I wonder how discipline helps or assists, and how does that play a role in your life?
Yeah, it's a great question. Discipline is so important to me. I mean, as I mentioned, being an achiever, discipline was key.
Mm,
And it's taking that same approach to developing intuition and to really be able to see solutions that might be invisible, right? I feel like one of my biggest strengths in my career has been to be able to see what's not there. And I'm not saying like spirits, okay? Think about it. You have a problem in your business, okay? The analytics and the data tell you something, but you're kind of feeling like it might be something else, and so you do a little more research and you start seeing something that no one else has seen before. This is what I'm talking about. Your intuition
mm,
can lead you there, right? So I feel like having discipline to really practice and build the muscle of intuition has greatly served
hmm,
me. And having the discipline to listen
hmm,
to myself as well. People can resonate with different terms. I use intuition because it's the most encompassing, but you can use that to mean God, universe, your higher self, your guides, your angels, whatever you resonate with is perfectly acceptable. But being able to also tune into yourself, what is it that I need in this moment? You know, I'm feeling this way or that way. Does that mean I need to slow down a bit today? Do I need to
hmm,
take a little nap? Do I need to get to bed earlier? Do I need to say
hmm,
no to this kind of food or that kind of food? I actually had someone on my podcast. Interesting you brought up what you did. I interviewed her about intuitive eating,
hmm.
right? So she released a bunch of weight through intuitive eating, through being able to determine and discern what was best for her body, because everybody's different, right? And what works for someone might not work for you.
That's right.
And I feel like this is the main thing that's wrong with society right now is it in just the guru land is they try to project a solution onto you. Well, this worked in my business. Follow my blueprint, step ABC, you'll
Mm,
have the result. Just pay 1997 down below, right? You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
But that product was created from their point of alignment. And I use this metaphor of a rainbow. So the way that a rainbow is created, you've got to have sun, you've got to have a light source, right? You've got to have some water in the sky,
Yeah.
right? That light has to refract at an exact angle
Mm,
of
mm,
42 degrees. Now I find
hmm.
it funny that the answer to the universe, what's the quote, is 42
Yeah, level 42. Yeah,
from the
the
Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Galaxy.
Galaxy.
I'm like, what
Yes.
were they trying to tell us? I mean, that's kind of a coincidence, right? But here's how I use that analogy. You and I, even if we're standing right next to each other, we're not going to see the same rainbow
Mm,
because our eyes are in two different spots
hmm,
to see that 42 degrees. And if you're at 39 degrees, well, the rainbow is going to be a little more faded, or
mm,
55 degrees, same thing. But 42 is where it's boldest and it's brightest. And the person who created that product, whatever it is, they were using their 42 degrees. Now you've got to use your 42 degrees to see if is that product really going to help me? Is this what's helpful for me on my journey? Or is it maybe something else? And that's where intuition plays in because it can help
hmm.
you get aligned to what is your 42 degrees so that your career, your business, your message, yourself can shine brighter and bolder and help more people and have more of an impact. And I feel like that's what business is all about, right? It's about
Mm.
having an impact, making a difference. It's not just about the almighty dollar. It's about creating solutions, solving people's problems, and then of course profiting from that, right?
Yeah, I like the way you liken discipline to listening to yourself. And, you know, um, it's funny. In my notes, I wrote Seinfeld. This is one particular episode where Kramer in Seinfeld, somebody asks him something, and Kramer says, "Well, what does the little guy inside you say?
Yeah.
Listen to the little guy inside you.
Yeah.
That's intuition."
Yes. And a lot of us have learned to downplay it or dismiss it or think it's not important. And I would also add this: there can be many voices in your head, and I'm not talking about
Mm,
schizophrenia, but
mm,
there can be other voices in your head that you can mistake for your intuitive voice. It could be the voice of your parents, for example, or a voice of a teacher, or a voice of an expert. But discernment, again, here's that word again,
mm.
discerning between the programming, that's the thoughts that you're hearing, like from your parents or your teachers or whatever, that's programming, right?
Right.
That's built into your subconscious until you clear it away, until you rewire your brain. You've got to discern between what is my own desire, what is my own thought, what is my own path versus someone else's path, versus someone else's advice. Like what's right for me? And that's why it's a discipline, because discernment is
Hmm.
the discipline of intuition. Otherwise, everything's a good idea, right?
Discernment is the discipline of intuition.
Oh, there's a quotable quote right there.
That was wonderful. Discernment is the discipline of intuition. Yeah, that is wonderful. Christy Turley, what motivates you?
What motivates me? It's finding my own fulfillment. And while that might sound selfish to people, I really truly believe if you're lit up within yourself, if you're enthusiastic about what you're doing, if you have passion for what you're doing, that's contagious. Other
Mm,
people can feel that enthusiasm. I lived so many years of not being lit up, of
mm,
feeling like a slave to my business and not showing up maybe the way that I would have liked to because I didn't really love what I was doing.
mm,
And so I feel like when you can find that for yourself, and it takes intuition, it takes discernment, but when you can find what it is that lights you up, what it is that is your genius zone, the whole world benefits from that.
mm,
And that's what I love to help people do. I love to help people dig into what is your hidden genius? What is it that you've maybe rejected? What is it that you have been too scared to bring into the world that is actually going to maybe be the path to your 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figure business, whatever your dream is, right? I'm not here to tell you 7 figures is it or 9 figures
mm,
it is. Everyone has a different dream. And maybe it's not even the business aspect, the profit, the dollars. Maybe it's I want to touch 1,000 people's lives. I want to touch 100,000 people's lives, or 1 million, or 1 billion. It's like the answer is different for everyone, and that's what I want people to come away from this feeling is you've got to find the answers within yourself and stop looking to other people to validate you and approve of you and accept
mm.
you. That comes from within first, and that is truly the key to finding happiness, to finding fulfillment, and then lighting up the world around you. So that's what motivates me.
Wonderful, Christy. And how do you measure success?
Again, it's a question that is different for everyone. I used to
Right.
define success by my achievements, by the amount of money in my bank account, by the people I knew or were connected with. And sure, those all can play into success, but for me again, success is fulfillment. It's
Hmm.
not a destination. It's not something that you just like one and done. It's a journey. It's a discipline, if
Hmm.
you will. And it's a constant check-in with yourself. Like, am I, is this lighting me up? Am I going in the right place? Am I going in the direction of purpose and fulfillment? Or is whatever I'm doing taking me away from that?
Christy Turley, absolute pleasure. I was so excited when you accepted this. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, Joey.
How can we get to your podcast, your book, of course, The Intuition Led Business? How can we find it?
Yes. So the one place to find all of it is my website, ChristieTurley.com, ChristieTurley.com. I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
And yeah, my podcast, the Higher Genius Podcast, on all the major platforms, on YouTube, and The Intuition Led Business, my book, is also available on Amazon, or if you'd like a signed copy, you can get that on my website as well. So yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Joey. And I truly enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. I really did too. And if I'm in your neck of the woods, you, your husband, and I will get a cup of coffee.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. You be well.
All right. You too. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.